Delphina here. It's been 10 years since I printed the very first Somnolus books, and I am participating in a special event over at BackerKit called Booktopia to crowdfund and reprint a special Somnolus Omnibus edition of the first two books with new scenes and cooler art. If you want to snag a Somnolus Omnibus, go to somnolus.com/omnibus or follow and back the Somnolus Omnibus project when it launches in September. Somnolus Omnibus, Somnolus... Oh god, that's hard to say. Thanks for listening.
Do it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams untrue!
Hello, and welcome to Screen Tones, where we talk anything and everything webcomics. Today we're going to be doing a fun little roundtable about some of the things we're reading right now. I'm Megan, I use she, her pronouns, and I make the webcomic Sorcery Shenanigans.
And I'm Crispy, I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomics Ghost Junk Sickness and Lunar Blight.
And I'm Verathane, I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomics Tiralt and Witchwood.
Alrighty, so I guess I'll just start us off. I think at least us in this little jam sesh are familiar with Tiger.
You bet.
I sure
Cabal.
did catch up on it. I will... Very easy for me to be spoiler free, because I don't remember details, just vibes. And the vibes are great.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting into a very action-packed section. It's so good. The main character, fabulous. Lady character who's just like independent. I'm gonna go study sea sponges and nobody's gonna stop me. And I think that's great.
I like that.
Yeah.
What is it
we
about
love that
Meg?
for her.
What's
It's
the
literally about
premise?
that character, and that she wants to go study sea sponges, and she steals her brother's boat to do it.
It's great. I
it's
just received
fabulous.
the first book, so
Me
I've been reading
too.
it too. I just caught up on it. I'm not caught up on the website, but I finished the first printed volume, which is lovely and very fun to read. I just
Beautiful.
love
It's
her.
so thick.
It's so nice. The art
Honestly.
style is like gorgeous in print
Mhm.
too. It's like really nicely suited to it. This like monochrome kind of traditional like look where it's like it's been pencil shaded or like with like inks, like
Mhm.
really it's got this lovely texture to it. Just in the
For
artwork
sure.
itself. The expressions are incredible on like every character, every reaction panel. Like it's just so funny. Like it'll tone
Mhm.
change and it stays like entertaining. It doesn't feel out of place to go from like serious moment to like and now the character is making a silly reaction because it just feels like that's them. Like that's the character,
Yeah.
you know?
Petra is really good at writing very believable characters, like
Mhm.
very human characters, and her inks, fabulous. Honestly, one of many traditional comics that inspire me to get better at inks. Inks, fabulous.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I like the work that Petra puts into like their stuff. Like you said, like expressions, texture, and the tonal shifts handles extremely well. That is
Yes.
a super skill to
Oh
do.
my god. It goes from so funny to like the most like horrific eldritch monstrosity that like the
Mhm.
lines all coalescing like so organic and flowing and it's like so cool. Art goals.
For sure.
Art goals and like a little amazing nugget of a webcomic that you can read for free at
Yeah.
tigertiger.com.
Sometimes I am honestly surprised. A webbed comic? I am amazed at what is a free comic every time I look at a new one. I'm like, this is free?
Mm-hmm.
You're just giving this to me?
Yeah, that it's
Why
Well,
not?
that the physical, but it is amazing to think about, like, the quality and the just the journeys that you get to go on for stories that you get to read for free. Like, like,
Mm-hmm.
what? Holy heck! I'm blown away by that. Like, um, if it's okay for me to kind of jump right in.
Absolutely, please do. What are
Do
you
it.
reading, Crispy?
Well, one of my favorite webcomics of all time, that I am reading is Bicycle Boy by Jacques Rai, and it is a story about these two kind of wayward post-apocalyptic fellows navigating this terrain that has been absolutely destroyed and finding pockets of civilization. There is a half humanoid little android moment. They call him Poet. He meets up with Mock, and they kind of go on this journey to figure out what the heck happened to Poet. So, you meet these ragtag kind of teams, these disturbing discoveries, dynamic moments of just kind of horror that the human, you know, uh, humankind that mankind kind of goes through during these kind of fallouts with society, humanity, and stuff like that. And it's done so well. I love how visceral it is. I love how just like you can feel how like everything is just kind of gone downhill. You can see how their wounds they received during their travels is just so intense. The moments that they talk about how to survive is one of my favorite portrayals of characters that I like to see. And I've said this in other like episodes where I'm like, I want to see messy characters. This is great. I
Mm.
like to see characters that are not fully composed. I like to see characters that are just absolutely losing themselves in navigating such crazy terrain. And, this is not even talking about the presentation of the webcomic itself. It also has a print form, which is gorgeous. But the whole thing beautifully colored and stuff like that, and you can see the growth. My favorite thing in web
Mm-hmm.
comics is that you can see um how Bicycle Boy started out. Now, it had its 10-year anniversary last year, so it's going to be
Wow.
11 years old this year in 2024. And to see the style shift is my absolute fave. You start with these kind of like more painterly lines and or not painterly lines, but just painterly altogether. The lines are a little bit more wispy and stuff like that. And as
Mm-hmm.
the comic, goes through its transformation, Jacques Harai goes with more bold lines, and the colors of the environment are really like they're really intense. They're saturated. It's exciting. I like how it looks like a block print. So it's it's one of my favorites. I could talk forever about this.
Well,
It's
I
just an
mean,
incredible comic. I love the setting in that one too. Like the fact that it's like a post-apocalyptic, like
Hmm.
dystopian kind of place that's been like this blasted landscape with like parts of it like irradiated and people are navigating through it. But it's not like there's so many like post-apocalyptic stories that are like, and here's like destroyed New York or like play like iconic places like that. But this is set more in like
Hmm.
rural areas. Like it feels kind of like Great Lakesy, like Detroit, like Rust Belt sort of zone.
mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's not like a common pick for
Yeah.
these kinds of narratives. And then when you get to see like these like very familiar like communities and places, or at least familiar for like North Americans in certain areas, it's neat. Like the attention to detail in the places where it's set in. Um,
Yeah.
it's great.
Thane, it's your turn.
Oh, well, so things that I'm reading, we have already discussed a bit of Tiger Tiger, just an incredible comic that I'm like literally actively in the middle of getting caught up on as we record this episode. Um, but another comic that I absolutely love, which is on hiatus right now, but God, it was made in a laboratory for me. It's called Broken. It's a Spider Forest comic, so you can find it. I know the title of it. If you look up Broken Web Comic, you may very well find a lot of like, "Help! I can't find the website for this comic. The page is broken," or something like that. But if you look it up on Spider Forest, you can find it there. It's a fantasy horror comic. The description on the like about page is like, it's about a psychic zombie kid befriending a fairy general and trying to deal with guilt, grief, and PTSD. And it's like, I feel like that's almost like underselling it. Like the relationship kicks off like this. It's like this fey society where people have these like glowing wings that they can use to fly around, and like the society is kind of stratified. The fairy general, he's like a kind of homunculus, like a government construct basically,
Oh
who
my
like his
god.
job is to fight eldritch abominations. And this like psychic zombie kid is like also a construct by the government, but like was basically kidnapped on account of having like psychic powers and turned into like basically an undead tool, like an automaton. And the general's
Oh.
job was to straight up control his body like a puppet, and move him around and blast things with his like more powerful like abilities, basically. And essentially, this supposedly undead tool wakes up and like begins to actually show signs of retaining a personality and a soul. And the general is the only person who recognizes this. And the more he tries to kind of be like, wait, I think this is a person. Like, I think this is actually a person who like has like thoughts and feelings and stuff, but the society that he's in does not like support this kind of thing, and they end up like on the run together, and it's a whole like layers of conspiracies starting to unravel. And like, oh man, the imagery is so good. The eldritch monstrosities are incredible. There's like some panels that make use of limited animation to sell like
Ooh.
these
What?
glowing like energy blasts and like magic circles and stuff like that. It's a visual feast the entire time. The villains look incredible. And I mean, all these things that I'm mentioning, like super powerful characters getting controlled, and like the main character has white hair, which is anyway, as I said, it's made in a laboratory for me in specific, so I have to give it a shout out.
I
It's my
mean, you weren't
catnip.
kidding.
It really
Literally.
is.
I'll
I
be honest,
recommend
I don't need
checking
to
it
add
out.
I don't need to add another comic to my list, but I think I will be
Yeah,
today.
No, please
same.
do. It's so
That
good. It's
was
like,
oh my god.
ah, read it.
My gosh. I can feel the hold back every time you're
Yeah.
like it sounds good. And the fact that they like the craft of like limited animation,
Mm-hmm. I love that.
fabulous.
Absolutely love that when people do
That's
that in
webcomics for you.
webcomics.
There's kind of
Exactly.
two ways of approaching the comic, like because the way that it is
Oh.
posted on its host site, and I believe also on Tapas, basically the pages are drawn as like full standard pages with like, you know, multiple panels to a page.
Mhm.
The way it's presented on the site, each page is broken down into a single panel, so you flip through them. And it's kind of an
Oh.
interesting way, like it's presented. It almost feels like a bit of an animation, where you can go
Mm-hmm.
through it.
Oh.
But in the printed version, and I believe also on Patreon, you can read it as like the original like page spreads. It's just an interesting way of like
That's so
presenting the
interesting.
comic. You don't see that very often.
Yeah.
No, I actually really like that. That's very smart if you were thinking of printing it and having it in different formats, because formats is a really huge thing that people are
Mhm.
kind of like battling with a lot in like, oh, like I started with scroll, but now I really want to print. And I know that people have successfully done it, but the amount of work that it takes to
Yeah.
reformat scroll into traditional without making it look like
You're
Boring.
yucky.
reformatting it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly I call it like a picture book. I'm like, oh no, it looks like a picture book because they're all
Mhm.
just kind of pasted with a white background like everywhere on a big spread
Mm,
of a page, and I'm like, this works on mobile for like pacing, but it doesn't. Ooh,
Mhm. It is
yeah.
a lot of work.
it can look a little dicey that way. But when you were talking about that, it was reminding me of like the format that they did for Ava's Demon. Isn't it similar where they have like a panel basically, or it's just like a single moment as you kind
Well,
of go through it? Or
the reading experience might be similar in terms of the pacing. alone. Ava's demon, though, I believe, was constructed with those rectangles in mind. It was almost like a kind of a
Oh.
Homestuck-ish approach where each of those panels will be the
Oh,
same
yeah.
uniform size as sort of a, I think it's a bit of a 3 by 4 ratio where they're like a little bit wider than they are tall. And then some of the
Mm-hmm.
updates will be full animations within that space. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like putting together an animated construction and then just presenting it frame by frame.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this case, it's actually like a full like comic spread with some being like super narrow or some might be really wide, and
Oh,
there's
I
like
like
relief
Mm-hmm.
panels
that.
that get so each one will be a
So
different
neat.
shape.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like this might sound like, oh, but what if you have like a panel with elements that bleed over into the next one? But it's actually really well constructed. Like you don't get the feel that you're missing something when you're reading
Mm-hmm.
through the cut apart version. But then when you see it all
Oh,
together in one piece, it's like an extra treat, like just this extra layer where you can see how the elements are interacting with each other. And Yeah, I recommend also checking out the book because it's very cool.
wow. Well,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
obviously. Yeah, that's really impressive. I will say, I guess I'll start our second round. I'll start us off with The Glass Scientists
Ooh.
by, uh, let me see. Hold on, pause. I have to check.
Pausing.
Alrighty, I'll start off our second round of comics we're reading, and I'll start with The Glass Scientists by Sage Kotugo.
Hell yes.
It's obviously also started out as a webbed comic. You can get it in print, but Sage has such great color work
Mm-hmm.
with their already tasty inks. Every little panel, every little page is such just like a visual feast for your eyes. If you don't know what The Glass Scientist is about, it is essentially a sort of Jekyll and Hyde retelling or reimagining. So you do have that, as well as I think a little bit of like Frankenstein as like and Frankenstein's monster as like some side
Oh.
characters in there as well. It's basically um Hyde starts a society for like the misfits of the world. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a werewolf in there, some really brainy science people, like people that like society just doesn't accept for one reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just trying to show their talents, their skills, that they are just like people, you know?
Yeah.
They're just a little bit different, a little bit weird. Um, and he doesn't really notice it, but he's also one of them, you know, playing into that whole, I almost said heckle, Jekyll and Hyde thing. That definitely comes in there. You do meet Jekyll, and he is just about as crazy and insane as you would think any Jekyll interpretation would be.
Mm-hmm.
But all the character, there are so many little like characters from the society that pop in and out depending on like, you know, who he's conversing with or working on stuff with, that everybody seems so well fleshed out. Nobody feels like a side character kind of left to the side,
Mm-hmm.
like not a lot of character development. Everybody gets really good treatment, and you really feel like everybody is so three-dimensional. They're people with problems and flaws, and they
Yeah.
don't feel perfect.
Do you think like it's interesting that like Sage chose like a world that you get to explore that's already like kind of laid out because it's a retelling, and you basically have this nice little sandbox that you can kind of just change details, have fun, reimagine things different ways, and kind of, you know, excite readers with like something like this. Like that's something that's interesting to me when I hear
Mm-hmm.
about people who do stories that exist already but with their own kind of flavor. And I don't know, that's kind of neat from what
Yeah,
I've
for
seen.
sure. I think uh I th- I don't want to say everybody, but I think some people look at that and go, well, you didn't make everything from scratch, so it's quote unquote not as much work
Mm.
as like making something from scratch. But to me, it is, if not in my personal opinion, more work,
Mm-hmm.
because I could not imagine picking apart a story like Jekyll and Hyde or, you know, a fairy tale reimagining and changing details and maybe little bits about characters or the scenery they're in to create a different enough story that you're getting something new out of it, but that you can still tell what it's based on
Mm-hmm.
without screwing up the plot somehow or things not connecting and making sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you also have
And
to be
so,
aware not just of the original message, but of like whatever the new thing that you want to impart that makes it
mhm,
yours. Like, why is
Yeah.
it you who needs to retell this? Like, do you have something new to spin out of this original text?
mhm,
And
Yeah.
that's like that extra layer of like text analysis, like keeping in the things that make it identifiable. Because if you change too much, then you might as well just not call it an adaptation anymore.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I think all of that is just amazing and so much to keep in mind. That people like Sage and anyone else who does like retellings or reimaginings like this is amazing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to put all that extra thought in there to create something new or give it a new, like, quote unquote, story to tell or a new kind of narrative to add to the original is quite a feat.
Yeah. I like that. I think it's a neat tool that I've seen around in
Mm-hmm.
webcomic spheres. People using previous existing stories, taking twists on stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it's neat. I think it's like there's a place for all of these kinds of stories, and I
For
think
sure.
that, you know, from what I've seen of the Glass Scientists, Sage has really found like their footing in a story like this and is enjoying it from what I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing, and I like that.
Yeah.
I'll talk about more comics.
More comics.
Bring more.
More. So from that, I want to talk about another one that I picked up, binged, ate it all. It's going to be ending soon, at least this
Wow.
year, which is really, really cool. Wow, webcomic time. And picking a length for your comic and keeping to it is incredible. But this one is Puffer and Clarissa by Jay Nelson. And I am
Mm.
in love with this story. It knows exactly what it wants to tell, how to tell it, and it wastes no time getting there. Puffer and Clarissa is a story about Puffer, who is this absolutely little tiny ball of goodness who wants to impress her mom, help show her mom that she can do what, you know, her mom can do. They're kind of traveling the world, and her mom is set on ruling it, as she was someone who came out of the grasp of the evil Lord Gel, and to basically go after him and stop him from taking over the world. Her plan is to take it over herself. So they're going to find these tools to do so. Puffer meets Clarissa. They go on adventures. It's awesome. Things are getting absolutely heated in the comic. I'm not going to spoil anything because you should read it. But one of the things that I absolutely wanted to talk about was the style in this comic. And I feel like it's honestly it's fresh, it knows exactly what it's doing. um like I was talking about the length, it looks extremely well thought out and planned, and I like to see that every moment and
Mm-hmm.
every little panel is meant for something. There is a beat there that exists to tell the story, and we're not wasting any time kind of getting there. And it is very refreshing to see. Not that slow burn is a problem, because looks in a mirror. um but I don't know. It's just when I started reading this and I'm like, oh wow, we're already there. This is nice. I like the pace of this. And
Hmm.
I like that we're getting places and exploring stuff. One of the things that I really, really like about Puffer and Clarissa is I like that Jay is exploring dynamics that you don't get to see as much in the forefront. So Puffer and her mom have this really intense dynamic where Sharon, her mother, seems to project a lot of her controlling and almost a little bit of that insecurities from her past, losing that control of her own life and putting it onto Puffer, who herself is trying to deal with, getting that acceptance and that
Hmm.
approval and that love from her mother. She meets Clarissa, and Clarissa's just like showing her that, this is something that isn't perfect. It isn't something that Puffer is, deserving of this treatment from Sharon's insecurities and stuff like that. So I love the nuance. I'm just like, yes, please show me more of these, complicated relationships that I don't
Hmm.
feel like I'm constantly being spelled out to me. I'm seeing the story unfold. It's a treat. It's a snack even. Like I can dip this. Oh my god, I enjoy it so much.
I'm so impressed at any story that can like be short and still tell everything that it wants to.
Yeah, if you
As
can.
someone who everything ends up being a
Oh my
thousand
gosh.
pages, I'm like, damn, I yeah.
If you could stick to your original page length, amazing. Good on
Oh
you.
yeah, even that, even just having it
Mhm.
not double in length from the point of like starting to the end was like, damn, sticking to the plan and not
Well,
letting
Sticking to your
things
guns.
spiral
Good
out
on
of
you.
there.
looking at it and reflecting, I'm just like, it's a really good like lesson on condensing stuff and just showing things and not being like, oh, is this too much or whatever. It's like, no, this is what it is. And
Mm.
the concepts don't have to be like massive or anything like that. It's all in the characters for this and the world, and Jay knows exactly what he's doing when he's designing this stuff, and you're getting thrown into this world. You can pick up on points easy, and I don't know, that's goals for me. Also trying to do something a little bit shorter. I did have to laugh about going over 1,000 pages, and you're like, oh, okay. uh
Hmm.
yeah. And then my next comic, Lunar Blight, I'm just like, okay, it's gonna be shorter. It's gonna be shorter. We're not gonna go over 500 pages. And now we're like, okay, well, we'll go to 600. Okay, we'll go there, but no more. And I'm just
Hmm.
like, oh, I swear, if we go over 600 pages, I'm calling somebody.
Better not be me
Yeah.
because I'm just gonna look at you and I'm gonna go, I could have seen this coming. I was not gonna. I'm
Optimistic
not. The
that
minute
I
you were
could
like, "We're
get
not doing more than
oh
500," I was like, "Yeah, sure."
good luck.
Something about Lunar Blight tells me no.
No. Oh, I'm gonna hit pause.
Hmm, hmm.
Renesmee, Edward
Oh.
Cullen. Oh no, it's recorded. Okay, go.
um so my second final comic for this episode that I wanted to give a quick shout out to, it's called The Storm Stained. It is somehow both of the comics that I've shouted out in this episode are about like fae societies of winged people. This one has got more of like an insectoid wing sort of vibe.
Mm.
Like all the people in it, their designs are kind of loosely based on different kinds of insects. So there's like moth people and like grasshopper people and
Ooh.
stuff. The designs are super fun. It kind of starts out in like almost a magical school type of setting where it's like this fairy society where people lost their wings generations ago, but like every so often, like one fairy would be born with true wings, and there's like a
Mm.
prophecy that they're like the chosen one who will help like bring back everybody's real wings or whatever. And the main character is this kind of winged chosen one, but she very quickly discovers that like there's more going on to that, that like actually she is a not the first chosen one, but not the first in like recently. There's like a whole bunch of them who just kind of get chewed up and spat out by this system. And there's like potentially some shady stuff going on under the hood. It's got some really interesting, just just incredible like world building that's really unusual. Like there's a lot of attention paid to like, are they actually like teeny tiny people? Because there's like occasionally there's these beasts that they fight and you're like, wait a minute, that's an enormous raccoon or something, but it's actually super dangerous to them because it like is taking their resources and stuff. And it's this neat blend of like tones where like some parts of it get like pretty dark and like violent, but then there's also like sort of a bit of a whimsical flair to like the way like because they are also like still like winged fairies and things are pretty cool. The creator is one of the OGs of webcomics who created Earth Song back in 2004. So has been
Dang.
at it for a
Nice.
while. This is her third comic, and all of them are pretty tight, and I recommend checking it out.
Well, I mean, I think I could probably speak for all of us when I say, unfortunately, my comic list will be longer after today. Or fortunately.
What's
You know.
unfortunate about that?
Fortunately, unfortunately, or unfortunately, fortunate. I will have to spend more time reading than I already do. But I think that wraps it up for our little, what are we up to? What are we reading? Little jam we had today. So thank you guys so much for listening. I've been your host, Megan, and you can check my work at sorceryshenanigans.com.
And I've been Crispy. You can check my work at ghostjunksickness.com and lunarblight.com.
I still am Verathane, and you can check out my comics at chiralt.sevensmith.net and at witchwoodcomic.com.
I won't be crispy for long.
Thank you for listening to Screen Tones, a webcomic podcast. We are supported in part by the fantastic folks at Hiveworks, home of many amazing independent webcomics. Check out their store at hivemill.com to find ebooks and print books of many fine Hiveworks titles. We're also supported by, well, listeners like you over on Ko-fi. Drop us a few bucks if you enjoy what we do and want to help us continue talking about anything and everything webcomics. And don't forget to give us a follow on Blue Sky and Tumblr so you don't miss an episode. You can find links to all of those at screentonescast.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.